Hello and welcome. This is Randy with Excel for Freelancers, and thank you for joining me with part 8 of the Employee Manager, where we have added a week view scheduler along with last week's month view, and we now have it in a new tab order. We have redesigned and re-optimized the scheduling, so I'm excited to show you that. We also have added an additional time picker, which is a really cool feature if you haven't seen it before, to quickly choose times. We also have added a shape-based date picker, which I'm going to show you. We've got lots of other enhancements and lots to show you, so let's get started. Okay, welcome back. We've got a whole lot to cover. In fact, we've got a few items that we did not cover last time. So let's get started on what we need to cover. And I've got a whole list of new items, so I wanted to go over that with you. We've got a pop-up calendar that we're going to be adding, so that's really cool. I got a list, pop-up calendar, we'll go over that. Time picker, we've got that. We've got a time clock list sheet, that's right, I almost forgot to tell you about that in the intro there. And let's pull it over. So it's just the data right now. All it is the data list. Pull it up here. Here it is here. And so it's just the beginning of what we're going to be doing, but this is going to be the main database of the time clock, and we've automatically got that right into the time clock history now, so that's going to automatically fill. So we're going to focus on that. Let's see what else we've got to show you. We've got load time clock history. Okay, I just showed you that. We've got the sort events on employee load. Now the events, when we sort it, the events are going to be sorted by the newest to the oldest. So we've got that. I'll show you how that's going to go there. We've added a week view and month view tabs on the scheduling, and we've also, let's take a look at that real quick. Scheduling, we've added and we've optimized it, so it's really good. Before it was good, now it's great because we've got a week view, and the week view not only shows our event type, but it shows the event name as well, so we get a lot more detail of it. So we have the month view, which is really nice because you can see a kind of a full month, you know, just by looking at it, but you can't really get the detail level unless, of course, you select a specific cell, and then you can get the detail there. On the week view, we do have that, and I'm going to add that pop-up. I just haven't added that yet. It's a very quick. I'm going to add that pop-up here so we can also get the event data on that as well. But we have a lot more to see here. We've got the event type, and we also have additional way to conditional format those. So I'm going to show you how we did that because it's based on a text containing, so we're going to go over that with you as well. We've got previous and next week's, the ability to move back and forth, so I'm excited to show that to you, and it automatically refreshes. And one of the best things that we've done is we've now eliminated the formulas in here, except it automatically refreshes, which is a really great idea. All those formulas could definitely slow down the application, so we want to remove the formulas and only use them when we need to. So I'm going to show you a great trick that allows us to get the data and get the values that we need without having the formulas always there. It's more of a calculation on demand, and that kind of calculation on demand is super powerful when we can use it, and it speeds up our workbook. So if we were to have a lot of events, which eventually you will, it's not going to slow down your workbook, so that's really important. We've also added the this week, so this will just automatically move to the current week, and it's really powerful. So the scheduling aspect of this application is really getting built out now. And I had mentioned to you last week back on the month view that I kind of wanted to see the month here, so we added additional rows because we're a little bit compressed up at the top. And so now we have the month that's going to always show. So when we move to the next month, it automatically changes. So as well as the year too. So that's automatic. I'm going to show that to you as well. Before we get to all that, there's something I showed you last week that we didn't get to as far as how to. And if you look in the Employee Manager, last week we added custom fields. When we go to payroll and details, we have earning details, and you see these are some custom fields. Now the ability we have a list type here. We can change this to a list type. We can change this to an amount or any different field type from our admin screen. For example, if this is a drop-down list and we go into our admin screen and we look at the employee settings and we see it's a list type, which you just saw, and here's a list. But what if I want to change it to a date type? So all we got to do is change the date type. Our list type disappears, and all of a sudden we go back into Employee Manager and we select Of course, it's no longer a drop-down list. When we select Adam, we see it's no longer. And now when we just enter a number, it's automatically converted to date type, which is really cool. Now, let's say I wanted to convert that to a number type. I would just go back into the employee events, go back into the employee settings, and then change that to, let's say, number or even amount. We can change that to amount, back into the employee manager, and now you see it's an amount field automatically. I showed you that feature, but I didn't show you how we did it. So let's go ahead and take a look and see exactly how that was done. The first thing we want to do is slide over on the admin screen and move over so we can kind of get an idea of some of the features that we use to make that happen. And some of it has to do in the hidden types, the hidden columns here. So I wanted to show you how we did that. Now we go take a look into the employee settings, and if we see here, we have some formats here located in B. We've got a list of field types and we have formats. So that's going to help us. General text is a general format. A number is 0.00. An amount we've assigned to this type of format, which is a $ and then pound, comma, pound, pound, and then 0.00. And then, of course, the date, month, date. Now, you can change these formats. Let's say you would like D to M. You can change these formats to whatever you like. Okay, so that's really, really a powerful feature. Once they're changed here, they will automatically be changed in the employee manager here. So for example, let's say we take the carpentry skill here and we change that to a date. So let's go back on here and go into employee settings, and we change it to, let's say, hire date or something like that. And then we want to change it, of course, it's going to be a date field. And let's say I want to make it day, then the month, then the year. So we can change that like that, and let's just double click this again, which is going to reset the format, and then we go back into the employee manager. All right, so if we clear that out and put in 12/31, now we'll see that the day here is the 31st of December 2018, because we've changed the format here automatically. And we click here in the employee settings, those formats are located right here, so the day would go first. We'll return it back to the month. So if you change it, it's going to change here. Now let's go ahead and see how we did that. Click on the date once again, reset it, and then go back in here, and then it'll automatically, now it's December 31st. So you see we can automatically change that format. It uses this format. And let's go into the code and see how that happened right here. Let's go into the code. All right, into the Developers tab, clicking on Visual Basic, and we're going to focus on the Employee Manager sheet, right? The Employee Manager, that is the main sheet. Excuse me. Let's go back to the admin screen first, and then take a look at that. So what's going to happen is when we make a change, I want something to happen when I make a change here from G108 to G111. When a user makes a change to any one of these, I want to take whatever format is it, and I want to apply that format to this, or this. Okay, so I want to apply that format accordingly to the according field. So let's see how we did that. All right, back into the code. So now we know what we're trying to do. And of course, it's going to be worksheet change. We're focused on worksheet change because we're actually making that change to a specific worksheet. Here we go. Here is G108 to G111. Let's add some note to that. On change of custom field type. Okay, so now we got some notes. So we know what's going to happen. G108 to G111. If a user makes a change to any one of these fields, G108, something should happen. What should happen? Let's take a look at that. First of all, we want to know the field type number the field type number, and that's going to come in handy. The field type number is the number, is it? So for example, what would that number be? If it's text, it would be 1. If it's number, it would be 2. So this is a field name. You see this field types, okay? So that's a named range. So that means when I look for text, let's say I looked for text in that, the return, a match formula is going to bring me 1. If we select number, it's going to be 2, amount 3, date 4, and list 5. So what I want to do is I want to get the number. I want to know date in this case is 4, list is 5, right? So I want to pull the number, because when I know that number, I know what number of row, I know what the format is. All I need to do is add 119. So for example, if they've selected text here, right? I want to know what the format is. I want to get to general. I need to know general. How do I know? Well, I know that text is the first item in our list, right? So if we use a match formula, the return is going to be 1 because text is the first item in our list. So now we know 1. So if we say B plus 119 plus 1 is going to get us general. Plus 2 would get us the number format. So using the match, we can pull the actual format. So there's many ways to do that. That is one way we're going to do that. So we can do that using match, as we just said. So the field type number is equal to application worksheet function match. This is the same match that we use in the formulas in the application workbook. When we say application worksheet function, when we define this, that means we're going to use a function that is in the worksheet itself, in the cells. So it's basically the same. The first parameter is what we're looking for. We're looking for the target value. That's the value that the user just changed. And where are we going to look? Where we're going to look in Sheet 4, range field types. That is the range. Remember, I just showed you that range. And we want an exact match, so that's 0. I don't often use this because it does return errors when the user selects something else. So it's a little bit finicky, but in this case, the user's not going to select anything other than those 5 options, but it could return an error. So sometimes I'll use the find. But in this case, I wanted to show you how to use the match. But keep in mind, match can be a little finicky within the code itself, and it can return errors at times if it's not found. So keep that in mind. Match could be a little bit buggy sometimes. So I don't always use it, but I wanted to show you this time. Okay, so now we want to make sure if the field type number does not equal 0, in other words, if it's found, then continue on with all of this. If it's found, continue on with all of this. If the field type number does not equal 5, 5 is a list, right? 5 is our last field. So 5, we're not going to format it, right? Well, I guess we could format it as text, but we're not going to, we want to do something special, and we want to assign a range to it. Like, for example, if the second one is list, I want to assign this range, this range, data range, to that specific cell. So basically what I want to do is I want to go into data on the cell, and I want to assign that specific data validation to that cell, which is here. When we go into employee manager, and we want to assign that specific named range. So here it is right here, right? So this is the list that I want to assign if it's 5. If it's 1 through 4, we're going to format it. In other words, if it's, let's go back into the admin, back into the employee. If it's 1 through 4, we're going to give it one of these formats. So let's continue with our code. So if it's not 5, then do the following. The first thing I want to do is I want to delete any data validation. Maybe first of all, we don't want a validation there. It's not going to be a validation. Even if it was a validation, we're still going to delete it because we might renew the validation. So first we're going to take away any data validation. What does that mean? Validation delete. What does that mean? Well, what that means is this. When we have a data validation, for example, it's going to, you see this is a data validation, right? There's no data validation here. There's no drop-down list. So it basically removes the drop-down list from the cell, regardless. So we could do that with everyone. We're just going to remove the data validation. So that's the first step. The second step is to assign a format. It's really just 2 steps. So what is the format that we're going to assign? It is sheet 1. First of all, where are we going to assign the format? Sheet 1, range 4, B in the target row. Well, what is that? How is that? Let's take a look. Remember data mapping. Let's take a look. Admin, right? We know we're focused on, I know it keeps changing to company information. Every time we go back here, it changes to company information. There's a reason for that. So that's specific. So for example, if we go to another sheet and we go back to admin, it's going to go back to company information. And that is because we're using a find on holidays. And if it's hidden, meaning it's here, it can't find it. So keep that in mind. That's why it always reverts back to. There's other ways around it, but for now it's okay. So that's the reason. Okay, focus here. Let's continue on. It says, when we make a change here, we need to format a specific cell, right? And for example, in the hire date, what cell are we going to format? We are going to format this one right here. That's G73, right? G73. If we make a change to the test score, we're going to format J73. This one is G75 and this one is J75. But I've got to know what cell, what is the right cell to format. Well, we have that right here. I have them mapped right here. Field, let's increase that. G73, J73. So when we make a change to list, if I make a change here and change it to number, I'm going to look here and I'm going to say, okay, the same row, column B, the same row, what cell are we making that change to? It's right here in B, column B and the same row, column B in the same row. So I know what cell in the employee manager to change. It's just another data mapping. So now we know what cell. So we know the cell is in B and the target row. So it's going to say whatever this range is, whatever this range, we're going to change the number format of that specific cell. And what are we going to change it to? We're going to change it to B, right? G4B 119. Remember, we worked it plus the field type number. If it's 1, it's going to be B120. If it's 2, it's going to be B121. That is the format that we're changing it to. We're using that as the value, so we can map the formats too. So if it's B, if it's text, it's going to change it to 20. Excuse me. If it's text, it's going to change it to general. If it's number, it's going to change it here. So based on that 119 plus whatever number was found, that's how we can map it. We're using these two mappings to set the format. So that's if it's the first 4. Well, what if it's list? What if it's the last one? Let's go over that. So if it's not 5, do this. But what if it is 5? Else, then do this. Okay, so what are we going to do first? Well, with the specific cell, B in the target row, remember this is our mapped field. With this, what are we going to do? We're going to do something with the we're going to focus on the validation. So with the validation, do the following. The first, delete whatever validation might be there, delete it because we're going to replace it. The second line, we're going to add the validation. And what validation are we adding? Well, there's 4 different possible validations. For example, let's take a look here. If we change all of these to lists, if we change them all, we actually have the ability to add 4 different custom lists here. Okay, so we know we got 1, 2, 3, 4. So we know. Okay, let's take a look at the custom list, the name manager, and I have created 4 different custom lists. The first one is custom list 1. That is the dynamic range that covers this. The second one, and the only difference between the names of these lists, the only difference is the number at the end. 1, 2, 3, or 4, right? So I can use that. Right? So for example, if I set this to list, this is number 1, right? What row are we on? We're on row 108. So if we set this to list, 108 minus 107 means list number 1. List, if it's this, 109 minus 107 is list 2, right? So we can use that. This is the first, second. So we can use that to automatically set the dynamic range based on those specific lists because we have all 4 lists and they're exactly the same name except for the last number, and it's based on a number. So we can set that using this. So for example, the custom list, every dynamic range, every named range starts with this. The only difference is the number at the end and whatever target row. So if that target row is 108, that means it's the first list. 108 minus 107. That's it. That is how we set the list number. And the rest is just some parameters where we're going to ignore blanks. Yes, in cell drop-down list true, show input true, show error true. So those are just some variables. So that is how we automatically set both field types and dynamic ranges per list. So it's really, really powerful. So we can use that and we can customize that. Now also, we also added conditional formatting. If you look here, when we don't select a list, when we select something else, it disappears. Well, how do we do that? Let's go ahead and take a look at the conditional formatting. Highlight that and go into the home. Click on the conditional formatting and manage rules. And we just set a specific rule that says for K106 to K125, that's the column we're focused on, edit that rule. And we're going to say if it does not equal list, if G111, right here it is right here, G111 does not equal list, then I'm going to format it. We're going to give it a specific font color that is the same as the background color. We're going to give it a border. We're going to hide the top, the right, and the bottom borders. We're going to hide those. We don't want to see those, only the left border. And we're going to give it a fill. We're going to make sure it has that same blue fill. That is how we hide a specific list based on parameters, based on those parameters. It's very, very, very simple, but it really looks good because you can simply hide the list that you don't want to use just by selecting something other than what you want. So that's a great way to hide a list, and so you can show only the list that you want to work on and add to it. So that's really, really powerful. I'm glad I got to show that to you. Let's move on to our pop-up calendars and pop-up time pickers. In our employee manager and both the employee events, we've employed a pop-up type of calendar. So it's going to be really helpful. As we spoke of before, it gives the user the ability to set a specific to and from date when we have a calendar. So it's really convenient and really easy to use. This particular calendar is something that I created myself about 2 years ago. And you may have seen it before. We focused some videos directly on it before. And you also have the ability to change themes, which I really like. And it is a shape-based pop-up calendar. So it is much easier to use and much more beautiful than the form, but it's a little bit more finicky. It's a little bit harder to get it set up. Macros have to be assigned. So it can be automatic, but once it gets set up in a workbook, it works great, and but there's some issues sometimes, so it's not as perfect. If you want something super stable but not as beautiful, go with the form-based pop-up. The form-based, those are really, really stable, and but these are really nice. So I wanted to show you those, and you have the ability to change it. So if they're protected properly, theoretically users can delete them, although I have added protection in if it does happen so that they don't get deleted. So if we were to click delete and we select something else, then we have a protection that's going to bring it right back. So that's kind of a nice feature, but it's not as perfect as a form-based, but I like the looks of it a lot better. So keep that in mind. We get to change the colors, so whatever you're working on, it's really nice. And also what I like about it is whatever date you've selected. So for example, if we selected 11, when you click, it's going to show the 11th up there. And if there's no date, for example, if we clear that out and then we select something, it's going to show the current date, which is really nice in orange. So there's some features that I really like about this calendar, and that's why I created it. It's because I wanted something new, a fresh look. Maybe one day I'm going to create a calendar that's a date range calendar that shows the full range, like a double calendar. I think that would be pretty cool to show to have. So you could do the from and to date automatically, like in the airlines when you book a flight ticket, they kind of show that. I want to do something like that, so perhaps in the future we'll do that. Okay, so that is it. Now, basically the code to this is this. What this does is it creates a hidden sheet, and if I'm going to unhide a sheet, it's a little bit off the screen. It's called Cal Pop-Up. And this basically is the sheet. This is a backup calendar, and here's all of the coding. And then it's basically like this. I've gone over this a few times, but so we're not going to go into great detail because I have so much to show you. But this is a hidden sheet. This belongs with it. And this sheet gets created automatically. What I will do is I will include a link to a file that is just this calendar, and it has instructions. Let me pull that up for you real quick so you can just take a look at it. And that is the actual instructions to that. So you can go ahead and take a look at that. I've got time picker and date picker. So this workbook, I'm going to include a link for. Basically, this is the pop-up date picker. You've got a list of instructions of how to incorporate that in your own workbooks and along with a calendar. So I'll make sure to include that link. That is something you may have seen before because there was a video specifically on this. And the same thing with the time picker. The time picker is really cool as well. It gives us a great ability to pick times. Let's take a look at that into the events. We have a date picker here, which you just saw, and we also have the ability to add a time picker. So to quickly add times, if you want to add 10, 15, it's very, very quick. Just click that and it adds a time onto your cell. Also, again, just like the other ones, you have the ability to customize the theme of it into different colors. You also have the ability to customize the intervals. So if you want 15-minute intervals, 10-minute intervals, or 5 intervals, you can also. This is also a shape-based pop-up, so it's very, very cool. You have the ability to choose AM or PM on here. And just click done when you're done. So it's very, very simple, and it's much easier than locating your times from a drop-down list. So that's why I created it. It's a lot quicker way to quickly select a specific time. And again, this also is shape-based, and it is a little bit volatile, but at times, as long as it's in a stable workbook, it should be okay. And I wanted to get that to you. Again, let's go into the code and see how we did that. I'm not going to go over every aspect of this because it gets involved, but I'll go over the basics with you so that you can know how to incorporate this in your own workbooks. Into the events, right? And so basically what we have here, this checks if it's missing, and if it's missing, it's going to undo. So if a user deletes, here's for the pop-up calendar, and here's for the date picker, and this is on selection change. And basically what this is going to say is we've set the shapes to calendar, and it's going to say is if calendar is nothing, then the user deleted the shape. So what we have to do is we have to undo it. So if all of a sudden that doesn't exist, right? If all of a sudden for some reason the user selects another cell and it doesn't exist, undo it. So make sure you undo that delete. Let me show you what that would do. If I click the calendar and I click it and I click delete, right, it's gone, right? But if I select something else and the calendar is not found, it's going to automatically add it. So that's how it happens, and that's how we can do it. And so it brings back the calendar that was just deleted. And we do the same thing for the date picker too. It's automatically application undo if it's not found. Okay, so that's what those are. And now basically the selection change, that as far as pulling it up, as far as pulling up the date range and pulling up the time clicker, if the user selects, this is what you want to focus on here. This is on selection change, okay? If the user selects a cell, selects L10 or L11, then I want to show the calendar, TP show. That is a macro that will run the time picker, excuse me. Else, if they select anything other than this, hide it, hide the time picker. So again, let's take a look at that. If they select here, L10 or L11, the time picker will show. If they select anything else, it's going to be hidden automatically, just like that. The reason it didn't hide here is because this is a large field, and if they select that many cells, it's exit sub. So if we select here, exit sub, here, exit sub, here, delete, same thing, exit sub. So every time we select and go out of it, it's going to hide it. They both have the same functionality. So if they select this, the time picker is shown. If they select this, the calendar is shown. Let's go back into the code. L10 or L11. So if you have a time field, all you need to do is add it, J25. And it'll show up when you select J25. It'll automatically display when you select that cell. So that's all you have to do. And the same thing for the date picker. And the time picker would be right here in J10 through J11. Okay, so we have that here. This is the pop-up calendar, the date picker, J10, 11, the time picker, L10 and 11. So all you would need to do is change these ranges to show wherever you want your date picker or your time picker displayed. The same thing I've done for the employee manager. When we click on the employee manager, we've got several fields here, several fields. And these are just macros that are run to check to make sure if the sheet doesn't exist, that's the calendar pop-up sheet, it creates it automatically. If the calendar will be shown if they select one of these cells. So we have K16, all of these cells is where when the user selects, I want that calendar to be shown. If they select anything other than that, then again, we're going to check for the sheet that runs the macro to make sure that calendar pop-up sheet exists and then hides the calendar. So that's all we do on that. So that covers the calendar. I know I kind of went over quickly, but you do have the ability to put this wherever you like. So it's a really, really cool and powerful feature. I wanted to show it to you. And for this particular application, I really don't want to be selecting from drop-down lists like this. I'd really rather select a specific time that's really fast and just click done. So I like that much better. So that's why I've added it in here. And this one, I guess, is not going to be there. All right, so we've got that covered. All right, let's move on to the scheduling, which is going to be the focus point of this. Even though it was the last one, we've added a lot more into it. And we've also optimized this. And if you'll remember in the month view scheduler last week, if you haven't seen last week's episode, make sure you go and watch that. That would be the employee manager number 7. So make sure you watch number 7. This is number 8. We're focused on number 8 here, the employee manager part number 8. We're going to focus on, and if you'll remember in last week's, we had a lot of specific formulas, and it worked really, really well, except for the fact that when we add a lot of data, it could be slow. Anytime we add tons and tons of formulas, especially a slow formula like some product, this could slow down your workbook. So we always want to optimize when we have the ability. Just because something works in Excel doesn't necessarily mean it'll work forever or work great even when you add a lot of data. So we always want to try to optimize it as much as possible. If there's a better way, then let's do that. And so what I decided, and actually with some great feedback from some of our listeners, and you know who you are, so thank you very much who've helped me out with some of the ideas. So I appreciate all the feedback, because it's not just me, it's a community effort to make this application better. So it's all of us that are really helping. So the feedback I get is always great, and I love your ideas. So that helps me too. So moving forward, what I decided to do was place these formulas in the hidden rows. So if we unhide that, and we see now we have two rows here, rows 5 and 6, and these contain the formulas. And I've separated in, if you take a look, before we're going to check, is it a weekend or is it a holiday? I had this together with another formula, but I've separated it out. The idea is, if it's a weekend or it's a holiday, I can color the entire row based on this one value. All right, let's go into the conditional formatting and take a look at that. Under the Home, Conditional Formatting, and Manage Rules. And we'll take a look at this gray one. This is the one we're going to be focused on. In fact, we do not have to color that font anymore, so we can make that an automatic now. Click on OK. And click Apply, and you'll see that the W shows up. And basically what I'm going to do is run this specific conditional formatting based on this one cell value. We're going to color the entire column. And we can do that as long as there is no absolute $sign aside to the F. On the left side of the F, make sure there's no $sign so that it's not an absolute, and it covers every column in our table here. And when we click Format, we can see that we've just filled it with the gray filled, and when we click OK, we just have to make sure that it starts with F5. It starts with F5. In fact, we can clear that out. We just need one specific F5 all the way to AJ313. That covers it. When we click Apply, it automatically covers the row. The important thing here is that this F5 must match this F5. They must start in the same cell. When they start in the same cell, it'll cover the entire column. Two things: they must start in the same cell, and there must be no, if we add a $sign right before that 5, it won't gonna work. We click Apply, and let's see, it will not work. You see the difference there? Just that one $sign will make a difference. So it cannot be absolute there. It has to be relative so that it covers for every column. All right, so we've done the same exact thing for holiday. In fact, let's remove this one. We've got a duplicate. We just need one. Let's edit that rule and click on the format. We also we don't need to color that font anymore. That can be automatic, because remember, these rows are hidden, so we don't necessarily need it. Click Apply, and we'll see the H supplies there. And again, we can update this range, also starting at F5, and the same thing. It has to start at F5, and F must be relative. It cannot be absolute. Click Apply, and it works just fine, and it goes all the way down to 313. So basically, we've taken our formulas, and it's just one single column, one single row that covers the entire column based on our holiday dates, and we went over that last week. Now, the other part of the formula, this is where we want the event type to be displayed. That event type will tell us whether there's a specific event. In fact, let's go back to where there's an event. October, we have some events. There we go. Okay, so in October, we've got some events scheduled. When we click on it, we'll remember that there's a specific event name and an event name, and all the details will show up. But what I want to do is I just want to take this formula, the correct formula that we applied, and I want to copy it down, but only when it's necessary. What I want to do is I want to copy this. I want to take that formula. I want to copy it all the way down here. I want to paste it. I want to paste those formulas in, and now they're there, right? But now I don't need the formulas, right? Because we really need the values. All we need is the values here, right? For our conditional formatting to appear, all we need is the values. Now we have the formula, but what if we just paste the values? Let's undo that. Okay, so now what if we copy and paste the values? We take all that range, that entire range. Okay, so now I've selected the entire range. I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to paste those values in. Perfect. So now we have the values. There's a value here. It's called leave, and that's what provides us. So now we have all the information that we need, but we have no formulas. We don't need the formulas. We only need the formulas at certain times. When do we need the formulas? Well, I need to do that perhaps when we make a change to events here, right? But when we go into scheduling, I only need it updated when we go to scheduling. So for example, let's take a look at this event. It starts on October 5th, 2018. That's Tanya Angela. What if we change that? Let's go back to that event. Let's find that date. Here it is, October 5th. Let's start that on the 3rd. Okay, so now we've made the update. It's automatic. We go back into the scheduling and automatically see it's updated. How did that happen? Well, the thing is, all we need to do is run that copy and paste right when we go into the scheduling screen, right? When we go into the scheduling screen, that is the only time I need to run it, because we're not going to make any updates right now. I guess we could add a refresh button up here in case when we have multi-user, maybe we'll add a refresh button, but right now it's fine because we make a change to the events. So what I did is I created that macro that copies these formulas, pastes them down, then copies the values and pastes them down. Now we don't have any formulas that are getting calculated. And this is important because every time the workbook calculates, every formula in the workbook calculates. And we don't really need that. It's unnecessary. We only need it at certain times. So why not just limit that to just those times? So that's exactly what we've done here. When we go into the Developers tab and Visual Basic and we look in the Scheduling module, and this is where we've done, it's just a very simple macro that we've created. So if we look down here, we see something called Schedule Refresh here. The first one, Schedule Refresh. So all we're going to do is do the same thing. We're going to stop the calculations, and what that does, remember, if you remember, you'll see that stop calculation enables events false, calculation manual, screen updating false. So none of those things are all stopped. We just have to make sure to reset them at the end of the macro. Okay, so we're going to run that macro, and then what we're going to do is we're going to copy those formulas. Those formulas are F6 all the way to F06. Yes, it extends way beyond what we've done because we're going to use the same for week view too. Okay, week view uses that, and I'll go over that in a moment. So we're going to copy that entire row, F06. Why all the way to F06? Let's go way back. F06 all the way. Let me unhide these so you can see what's going on here and how we're going about that. I'm going to unhide right here. This is where our week view is, and our week view also has formulas to do the same thing, and it's also located in row 6. So our week view also gets pasted down and pasted down the values too, and our week view also contains event IDs here. So basically all the way to FO, here's FO, we're going to copy that entire row and paste it all the way down because we've included the formulas. This is why design principles are so important, because it's so much easier if you have proper design. The coding is extremely simple. So all we need to do is copy that code all the way down. So copying those formulas. Now we're going to paste them starting in F7, that's the row right below, and going all the way to 313 row, and we're going to paste them as formulas. Next, what I want to do is I want to calculate those formulas. Why do we need this here? Because we've stopped the calculation. So this calculates just the sheet, which is fine. We do need those calculated. That is important, because so as soon as it's calculated, then everything. Then we can take that range, that's the entire range where we copied those formulas, and I want to paste just the values, which means it's going to get rid of those formulas. We don't need the formulas, we need the values that those formulas create. So that's a good way to do it. So we paste those values, Then we just cancel the cut copy mode to equal false, so that cancels it, and then we just select E2 so that it selects a different cell. And then of course resetting the calculations so that automatic updates are now on and the calculations are now automatic. So we run that macro. And now to get that to run automatically, the schedule refresh, when we enter into the scheduling sheet, all we have to do is just add a line of code. Here in the scheduling sheet on macros, we here in the sub worksheet activate, that's activate when you select it here, we just add our macro right here, schedule refresh. That means every single time we activate that worksheet, this macro is going to run and it's going to update our schedule. So that is a great way to automatically refresh the schedule every single time we enter into the scheduling screen. This way you always have an updated scheduler every time. Just even if there are no changes, it's going to be updated automatically just in case. Also on the sub worksheet change here, we're going to change that right now. We're going to update that so that includes the entire range. Before it was AK, but I want to add those comments also into the week view here. So here in I want to add it all the way up to DG. So let's go ahead and make that modification. DG, now it's going to clear those comments every time we make a worksheet change. Every time we change the year, it's going to clear those comments all the way to 309. And in fact, we have actually moved the year to E2. So we've done a little bit of a design change. So we need to update that to E2. Let's take a look at that. Here it is, E2, and a great way, just in case you're not familiar, if you do make a universal change to your worksheet, please keep in mind that you can always use find, but be very careful. When we use find and replace, here is the find. We could easily find anywhere in the application that we use E1 and replace it with E2. And with this replace, you've got the option to select text and make that replacement only within the selected text, within the current project, within the current module, or within the current procedure. So find and replace can be really, really powerful. In this instance, we don't need it, but if you just want to find it, you want to look at it, we can go ahead and click, okay, so now we know if we do the current module, E1 is not located, but it can be a real huge time saver when you're making changes in your application. Just be careful and look through each of those changes, because you can really mess things up if you use a replace all and you don't cover all of the sheets and you don't check all of the work. So that's really, really important. So we've covered that, and I believe that's it. Let's move on now, because we've got a lot more to cover back into it. So that's all we have to do, and when we run that macro automatically, it refreshes the screen. It calculates it and does all the calculations that we need with a simple macro, and that's for both week view and for month view as well. And again, so all we have, the formulas are here, and the formulas are the same thing. In this formula, we're going to use these specific dates. This starts at B2. This is our week view, and our week view also runs. Why do we start on B2? Let's take a look. Let's unhide A and B columns so we can see what's going on in there. Okay, we can, let's move this group down just so we don't get it in the way. October 29th, that is our starting. This week view will change based on the previous or next week. So when the user clicks next week, it's going to change. It's just basically 7 less. So as it increases. So that start date of the week is based on this B2. So that's how we do it. That's how we do it. Just change that date. So as long as, and then every other day is just basically one above it, one above it. So that's how we do it. So it's very, very simple a way to handle it. And of course, when we click this week, it's going to change to automatically to whatever the start date is. So when we click this week, let's bring these shapes back up to where they belong, right up here, right up there. Okay, so now we've got that, and let's right click that. We can move and size with cells, make sure that's set up. Move but don't size with cells, perfect. Okay, so we're set there, and the reason they moved is because it's so close over to B. If we were to set it here and we hide it, then it's going to move properly. All right, so it was just very, very close to B, that's why we set it. Okay, but that's where I want it. Okay, so we've got that. So when we click this week, also it's going to take that formula and it's going to bring it into B2, and it's going to automatically create this week. So it's really, really powered. This is Monday. In fact, let's go ahead and add conditional formatting. We did it. I'm going to highlight all the days, and what I basically want to do is I wanted the current date, I want in orange. We did the same thing for month, but we haven't done it for the week view. So let's go into Home, Conditional Formatting, new rule, and what we'll do is we'll use a formula. Well, we can use cells that contain maybe a date, right? Actually, I want to use a formula because it's not going to be the current cell, it's going to be the one below it. So we're going to click here. We're going to say DA5 equals today, but we're going to take the dollar away from DA. Why is that? Because I want this to go through every column. And then it's going to say equals today. So if that's the current day, if DA5 equals today, then what? Then format it a specific color. Let's give it an orange. Give it a light orange color so the current day is always very clear. And when we apply that, we need to make sure that it's applied to the right cell. So there we go. Now it automatically covers today is Monday, October 29th. This video will be out Tuesday, October 30th, so I better get it done to get it to you in time. All right, so that's how we do it. We colored the current day automatically. You can color it any way you want, of course. And of course, conditional formatting, we've applied the same rules here, exactly the same rules, except I've done it in a different way. I've used the same formula, but here I wanted the date, the current date. I wanted the date here, and I wanted the formula that displays the event name here. So I wanted that here. So in fact, I've added a special formula here because in the week view, what I want is I want not only, let's go ahead and take a look at that. I want the event type and I want the event name. Well, how did I do that? Well, I did that because we know the event ID. If you look here, we use index, right? We're going to use the same formula here that we went over last week. We're going to index the event ID. We're going to use some product. So this formula gets copied down, right? And then, of course, just the values remain, right? So we have the event ID. We know the event. If we know the event ID, all I need to do is run a match. To match for the row, we use index match to pull. I not only want to pull the event type, but I want to pull the event name in this case. So how do I do that? Well, I'm going to use this formula, and this formula is going to be copied down just like they are. So first of all, if fi6 does not equal empty, what is fi6? Let's look at that. That is the first column, right? That gets copied over. If it's empty, don't do anything. If it contains an event ID, then do something. Well, what is it that we want to do? Okay, then I want to index. First I want to get the event type, then I want to get the event name. So first we're going to index the event type. What row? Now we need to know the row. What is the row of that? Well, we're going to use match to find the row. We're going to look up fi6. fi6 is going to be the event ID. If it exists, we are then going to run the match. Then what we're going to do is we're going to use our named range event ID to find it. We're going to need an exact match. This is going to tell us exactly what row is on, and then this is going to tell us what column, which is 1, because we want the event type. That's going to get us our event type. Then I want the event name. So what we're going to do is we're going to and then the dash, right? Because I want to separate the event type and the event name by a dash. So if you look down here, you'll see event type dash event name. So we're going to separate it, and now I'm going to use the same index match, except this time I'm going to index event name. So when we index the event name, it's going to return the event name. And so that is how we do it, using the same match formula, the same event ID, because we know our event ID is stored exactly here, 60 rows here, 60 columns right here. So fi is the first one. So when we bring our formulas over, when we bring them all the way over here, automatically, and copy them down, and automatically, then we just have to paste values, paste formulas. So for example, if I'm going to copy this, right click, copy, paste special, paste the formulas, nothing changes. That's exactly what we want, because the formula actually returns the correct information, this formula. But what if we copy this, take this and we copy this and we paste the values, again, nothing's going to change. That's exactly what we want, right? So now we have the information that we want, but we don't have the formula. We don't need the formula. We only need the formula to get the value. Once we have the formula, we can get rid of the formula because that speeds up our workbook. Great. So now we have, but how? Now if you look over here, we know, if you look and remember in last week's under month view, if it's training or leave, training, it equals, this equals training, right? And then we have a conditional format. If it equals training, let's look at that. Let's revisit that. Let's get out of that cell. And let's take a look at that under the home, conditional formatting. If it equals training, then color it green here. If the cell value equals training, color it green. But here, under week view, it equals a lot more than training, right? It equals, how do we get that conditional formatting? Let's go into the home, conditional formatting, and manage rules. Now it's slightly different. Now the cell value contains leave or contains training, right? And that is how it, so for example, for this particular one, edit rule, this contains training. It doesn't contain leave, so that's why it's getting colored green. So we can use contain. It doesn't need to equal it exactly. So we use that rule to apply, and we can color it automatically. And the same thing for leave. In fact, you can add as many different colors, as many different conditional formattings based on as many different leave types as you want. So your schedule can get really, really full with all different types of leaves and all different types of events. Whatever you want to do, it's completely flexible, and all you would need to do is just simply add to these conditional formattings. Right now we only have two based on the, so I really only have two based on the event type, right? One with leave and one with, let's bring this over here and edit this. So one with leave and one with training, but you can add a lot to that. Okay, you can add a lot to that. Let's update this cell. This comes from copy and paste. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we've covered the entire. Let's cover that. Let's clear that up. We just want a simple table. We don't want all these. When you copy and paste a lot, you get a lot of different rows. So we want to make sure it's covered entirely. There we go. That will cover all of our, let's get rid of the extra colon. Perfect. And we can copy and paste that over. This starts at 4 because we use the information in that. All right, paste that in there and click apply. Now we've covered our entire ranges properly. All right, great. So now we're set. We have the ability to go next week. Let's show you that next week so we can see that and how that's going to work. And all we basically have to do is update that 1B2. As I showed you that, let's take a look at that. Back into the VBA, we have the week view, schedule week view. How does that work? We'll go over that in month view. We'll go over that in just a moment. First, we'll start off with previous week. B2, you saw that before. That's the starting week date. So we're going to just basically set that as to -7. And then we just need to check the year. If the year, right, of B2 does not equal the year of E2, then E2 -1. What is that? Let's show you that. We'll go to next. So when I go to next week, and all of a sudden we get to December. Now when I get to January, I want this year to automatically go up. So when we click that, right there it goes up. So basically what it's going to check says if this year does not equal the same as this year, then make this year go up 1. So that's all that does. So that's why we increase the year if the years are not the same. So basically it says in this one previous week, and the next week is the same idea. If the year of B2 does not equal E2, which is the year, then E2, the year, equals E2 plus 1. It just increases the year once. And of course, if we're using previous week, it's going to reduce the year by 1 in case we're not in the right year. So that covers that. All right, let's cover month view and week view. We'll take a look at that. Basically what we have is the ability to select tabs, but in this case we've actually created 2 different tabs. And I've also assigned the same macro to these icons so that if you click on the icons as well. And all these are is 2 macros. Let's go ahead and unhide these so you can see what's going on here. Unhide that. And we'll go ahead and look over here, and you'll see basically we have 2 sets. We have a month view, and then if you scroll over here, we also have a week view. So we have a week view. So we have columns based on that. And if you look here, the week view is set up to look like this, and the month view is set up differently. So all we have to do is, oh, I just clicked it and ran that macro. So basically all we have to do is, let's hide this so we can get back to where we need. There we go. Okay, so we have the ability to select it. So basically all we're doing is hiding columns and unhiding columns. And let's take a look at that. All we're doing, it's very, very simple. And then I've set up two groups of shapes. This group here includes the next month, the previous month, this month, and these icons here. I've named that group. That group is called the month group, a group of shapes. Clicking on the week view, we have very similar. The next week, the previous week, this week. So all of those buttons are also in a group, and that's called the week group. And of course, I want the week group to show up when we click week group, and I want the month view to be hidden, and vice versa when we click month view. So we do just that inside the macros. Moving back into the macros into the VBA, when we click on schedule week view, all we're going to do, again, stop the calculations. The month group, we don't want that visible because we've selected week group. So we're going to hide the month group, and we're going to show the week group. And of course, we're going to hide these columns. These are the month columns. These are the columns that are focused on the month view, so we don't want that. And we're going to show the columns that are focused on the week view. And we do completely the opposite on the month view macro. And we stop the calculations. We're going to show the month group icons and shapes there, and we're going to hide the week view. And again, we're going to hide now the month columns and show the week columns. So it's a very, very simple macro. And how do we get that to run? Again, back into the scheduling. This is the on-sheet macros for the scheduling. And we're going to focus on selection change. If count is greater than 5, why is this 5? Remember, normally it's 1. The reason it's 5 is because when we make it, let's take a look at month view. How many cells are we selecting? It looks like 1, but it's actually in merge cell. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different cells. So in this case, I need it. So this way, if the user selects something, then it's not going to run any macros. But so if it's greater than 5, then. But if it's 5 or less, then do something. In this case, we've selected 5 cells, so we do have to compensate for that. So now it's if they select more, and that helps get rid of bugs. So if not, if the user selects F2, then run the week view. If the user selects DB2, then run the month view. So it's very, very simple. That's all we have to do there. And then, of course, if the target, let me increase that. That should be increased. Remember, if you take a look at here, I'd like the pop-ups. 309 AK, this is the macro that runs when we run this. So we can, but I want to add that to week view too. I didn't try this yet. So let's increase that. Now, of course, week view, if you click on week view here, that column ends at DG, right? But I want to, let's find an event here. When I select something, it would be nice to show the pop-up here as well. And exactly, the columns are already 60 columns. These are actually, this is column 165. This, let's take a look at this column, equals column 105, I believe, equals column 105. Okay, 105. So we know the event ID is exactly 60 columns, purposely the same as the month, 60 columns. So for example, 60 columns to the right is the event ID for this event. So let's change that. DG is the last row I want. Let's go back into that and change this to GG. Okay, now we've compensated for that, and let's take a look. I think that's going to work just fine. Go back into the week view and select that. Okay, and there we go. So all I did was update that because it's exactly the same. 60 columns. If it's going to look 60 columns away, it's going to find the event number, and it's going to pull all of the information up. Now we have the pop-up on week view. There we go. That's nice. All right, great. We've got that covered. We covered a lot today. Let's go ahead and go for review back into the Employee Manager where I have my little list. I'll keep this list here so you can refer to it. Pop-up calendar, we've got that, also known as the date picker. We've got the pop-up time picker. We covered that. Time clock sheet, we're going to cover more of that. That's basically just a sheet with data, and that information is now appearing on refresh automatically under here. And basically what we have done here is taken the employee ID and run an advanced filter on the new time clock list, and then filtered out based on that ID, the employee ID, brought the information in here. We'll go over that in a little more detail once we've built this out, and then taken that information and brought it right back into the Employee Manager here with our total break and total hours. Now all of these items are going to be updated based on the user type. Remember, whether they show the total time as decimal or whether we're showing it as times, this is going to be updated. So we haven't added that in, but we're going to be able to set those formats based on the user setting here. So it's going to be a really cool function. So I wanted to show you that briefly there. So we're going to go over that a little bit next time, but there's more to build out for that. I added pop-up calendars to this as well. And there was a small bug. This wasn't working, but now it is. That means that when we change this date, all of a sudden this changes the dates too. So I think that's really going to be helpful. And then this will refresh based on those dates. That's not working just yet, but it will be as we add more information. So we just started on the time clock, and we're going to be focusing on that in the next 1 and 2. How to get times into this list is what we're going to. Creating the list is simple, but I want to go through 3 or 4 different methods how we can get that data in there, perhaps from the mobile phone, perhaps from like a thumb or biometric device, or from a barcode. So we're going to go over some ideas that I have for that, and of course I really love your ideas too. They create this amazing application with your help. So we've got that covered, and so that's that. And what's next on this? Sort events. We didn't cover that, but that's just a simple sort. We'll cover that next time. That's because we already loaded events. Add the week view and the week view month update. So we covered all that. All right, we covered tons in this. I'm looking forward to bringing you next week. Of course, all of your ideas, comments, shares, and likes really help. I want to make this an amazing application, and I can't do it without your help. So I really appreciate all the help, whether it's a little criticism or you want to help, or you see something that could help this application. I really want to hear it, whether it's on YouTube or Facebook or messages or email. However you want, just share it, like it, and that's going to be an amazing application. Thanks so much for sticking with me on this massive series, and much appreciated. Thank you.